So we're going to do this book review right here. The Trouble with Cowboys. One of the hottest books. One of the best books. Girls, go read this book. I mean, he is the genuine cowboy. It reminded me a little bit of Conway Twitty's Don't Call Him a Cowboy Until You See Him Ride. And it also reminded me a little bit of, the Rose, with just different parts of the song that Conway Twitty would sing. And also, it's just a good book. But I would say it's definitely rated R, possibly older adult. You know, let me read the back to you. It was their parents' ranch, though the good old days and bad, but they wanted to hang on the land. Their pride, their family, the three Sorrento sisters will have to reinvent it from the ground up, and one of them just wants to reinvent herself in the process. Cowboys have never been any good for Amy Sorrento. First, her hard-riding father bankrupted the family farm, then all hat, no cattle boyfriend sold her out on national television, ending her promising career as a chef. Now she and her squabbling sisters have partnered up in a final attempt to save their land by starting an inn and local restaurant. So it figures that with everything on the line, Amy's key supplier is just the kind of Stetson tipping, heartbreaking bad boy she's sworn to avoid. But Kellen Reed has a few secrets of his own. And cowboy or not, Amy can't resist that wild kind of ride. It's one hot romance from start to finish. Carolyn Brown, from the New York best-selling author of Mistletoe Cowboy. And that's the God's honest truth. On the front cover, it says Simply Delightful by the New York Times bestseller author Lori Wilde, one of my favorite authors. It's The Catcher Creek and the author on this Trouble with Cowboys is Melissa Cutler, where there's more than to some men than meets the eye. Now, the odd thing is, they always say there's more, you don't judge a book by its cover. She meets him when he's dressed like a cowboy, but he's really a rancher. Now, what's the difference? You're about to find out in the book, because it's that good. Anyway, I'm not going to read you the first page, which is very unusual, but it's a little hot to handle. But he's a little hot to handle in this book, too. Acknowledgements. This book owes its success to many people. Corey, your friendship and writing know-how made all the difference to my success. My endless thanks goes to the wonderful people in the romance writing community who read my work and offered me advice: Janet, Georgie, Mary, Judy, and Samantha H. This book also owes its success to people who supported my dream, my family, my husband's family. Thank you for listening to me ramble about imaginary people and places all these years. Finally, my deepest gratitude goes to the people who dared me to take a chance on my unproven writer, my agent, Jessica Alvarez, and my editor, Megan Records, and thank you for changing my life. Okay, it's all about the paper clips. You all know that. Get a grip, Amy. Remember rule number 1. She twisted her arm away. What do you want? Just trying to keep the peace, Miss Sorrento. Amy, you look like you were ready to go postal on Linda Claus. I had to do something. She shook her hair back and lifted her chin. Let's stick with Miss Sorrento. And who are you? Kellen Reed, your neighbor. Damn, her morning just went from bad to worse. You're Kellen Reed, owner of the Slipping Rock Ranch, at your service. The way he was looking her over, she bet he was. I'm opening a restaurant here, and you're on my list to call. Is that so? I have a business proposition for you. She felt dirty even saying those words, like that from him, that they might divine that she was imagining how he would look astride a horse, shirtless. Lordy, maybe she could hand this particular negotiation off to Jenna. That's her sister. I look forward to discussing it with you, so long as you leave your bags of carrots in the car. Amy balked. He held up in his hands. I've got some time now. Why don't you follow me to my ranch and we'll talk about what it is you want from me. Business-wise, of course. Okay, something is bugging me. I got a hair that's bugging me. She chewed her bottom lip, considering after Brock McKenna in all his cowboy glory played her for a fool on the Ultimate Chef Showdown, she added a new #1 rule to live by in her life: resist temptation by steering clear of cowboys. Unfortunately, she was opening a restaurant that would feature a locally grown food, and her success depended on securing contracts with the best ranches and farms in the region. Kellen Reed's Cattle Ranch sat on the top of the exclusive list because of its reputation for producing the most coveted high-quality beef in the Southwest, not to mention the most expensive. So if Kellen Reed offered her an invitation to talk business at his ranch, she had no choice but to take him up on it. The way she saw it, she had to drive from the quick stand to this property to strategize a ways to convince him to selling Slippery Rock beef to her at an under market rate. That was going to be a problem because even now she was having trouble stringing together a single intelligible sentence with him looking at her with those deep brown eyes, and they weren't even alone yet. She would have to be strong. No going inside the house, no needless small talk. They would negotiate outside where she had quick access to a getaway vehicle. Should she sense her self-control crumbling, after securing the beef contract, she'd thank him and be on her way like a reasonable, responsible adult. No problem. She avoided him in a terse nod. It's a deal. Excellent. His dark eyes twinkled with lusty purpose, or maybe that was only a product of Amy's overactive imagination. Char, would you put these on my tab? He waved a candy bar and the bag of pretzels in her direction. Breakfast of champions? Amy asked. More like lunch. I've been up so long, but if you want to call me a champion, I'm not going to argue, he winked. Amy sucked in an unsteady breath, then tried to hide it with an indignant huff as she squeezed her thighs together. Don't go getting all hot and bothered out there, y'all. Let's get on with it, she said, her voice coming out as huskier than she intended. By all means, after you, ma'am. I know where the Slippery Rock Ranch is. I'll meet you there. Fine with me. He replaced the hat on his head and tipped the brim low over his eyes. And, honey, I know you're having a tough morning, but watch your speed on my property. Wouldn't want you to spook the horses. With another wave at Charlene, he left. Cowboys! Ugh! She muttered. Still, her eyes tracked the swish of his tight jeans out the door into the driver's seat of a run-down truck across the lot. Her rule might forbid her from getting too close to cowboys, but it didn't say anything about looking. That was page 7, 8, and 9. Moving on. Page 18, where they're talking about the rules again. What's rule #1? She shot him a glare like he was guilty of some heinous crime against humanity. Rule #1 is to stay away from cowboys. Her mission was so unexpected he couldn't help but chuckle. That rule doesn't seem to be working for you. What's rule #2? Go to church every Sunday. Seems like you got your priorities a little messed up and the cowboy rule trumps church. And page 19. Why did I go all the way over here? Okay, what's rule #3? Apologize when I know I should. Good rule. One he wished he knew he was better at. Does that happen a lot? More than I like, that's for sure. Kellen's time with Amy was coming to a close. He jogged ahead and planted himself in front of the car door. May I at least ask for your phone number? She went still. What? We still have business to discuss. Yeah, they didn't discuss business, if you catch my drift. Okay. On page 56 and 57. Lisa, what horrible luck that family's had. It's a shame Amy didn't fare better on the Ultimate Chef Showdown. The winner took home $300,000. Did you watch it, Kellen? Nah, you know me. I don't have time to use much television. But I remember hearing a lot of chatter about the competition. Didn't go well for her. Vaughn winced. That's putting it mildly. A word of advice, don't bring up the show on your date. It wasn't Amy's most flattering moment, but here's what people don't know. Her dad, Gerald, died a matter of days before the Chef Showdown began filming. And the episode she lost her marbles on was after her mom's collapse. She never allowed anyone on that show to mention it. Didn't want people's sympathy vote. But those are the facts. Chris shook his head. Man, that's rough. How do you know all that? Lisa asked. Vaughn peeled the label on his bottle, looking uncomfortable. I spent a lot of time at the Sorrento farm during that investigation into the Gerald car crash. Then Bethany's breakdown. In my job, you learn people's secret. Most of them aren't of the positive variety. Kellen's jaw clamped shut, and he refused to budge. Impotent frustration coursed through him, thinking about what Amy and her family had gone through. She deserved so much better than the hand she had been dealt. Page 60 and 61. Hold on, is there something being said about me that I'm not aware of, an unflattering rumor or something? Because I don't understand your opinion. I'm a model citizen, a responsible business owner, and a good man with friends who'd vouch for me. What do you find so bad about that? Oh, please, I don't deal in rumors, and I don't have anything against you as a person. Hell, I don't even know you. Crisis averted. Then what gives? The thing about Amy is that she feels too much, too fast. She's spinning in all directions at once and looking for a man who's steady, someone to be the calm center of her tornado life. I'm not sure how the notion got stuck in her head, because our dad was a farmer and she never got on with him, but for some reason she thinks she can find what she needs in men like you. And maybe she will someday, but now is not the time. Men like me? Ah, now he was onto her line, thinking. Cowboys, you mean? Exactly. God bless her. She's still optimistic about finding that ideal cowboy of her imagination, despite how many times she's been hurt. Now let me tell you what's going on. Rachel, the older sister, is paying him a little visit to tell him keep it all business, because she doesn't want to see her sister hurt. Now, he is trying to go, wait a minute, where are you coming from with this? Trying to piece all the puzzles together, if you will. And it's a little bit of a puzzle for him to figure out. But he's got a history of his own. He's not exactly a cowboy. If you read the book, you'll find out what I mean by that. Okay. And on page 62, look, Rachel, there's no hurt to be had. Amy and I have this understanding. Neither of us want a relationship. We're just having fun. Her gaze, knife-like resolve, finally met his. All the same, see that you stay away from her, and in the future, if you so much, don't hurt her, or more to the point, don't encourage her to hurt herself, jumping headfirst into shallow water, as it may be. Ouch. Rachel pushed to her feet and with a sigh handed Kellen her empty bottle. Amy's been damaged enough. If you lead her into more hurt, you'll answer to me. And that's a promise that you can take to the bank. He stood nodding. Yes, ma'am. I'm glad we had this understanding with each other. She offered him her hand to shake, which he took. Her grip was firm, and her palm and her fingers were callous. Rachel Sorrento was one tough lady. I've got something for Amy in the kitchen, if you wouldn't mind passing it along. She snorted. What did I tell you? It's produce, Rachel. Relax. He held the door open and then followed her in, rustled through the fridge of the bag of the produce he'd selected from the greenhouse that morning. I was going to deliver these tomorrow, but since you're here, she might as well use them while they're at their freshest. Rachel felt the bag. Vegetables? Cabbage, garlic, and 2 bunches of celery. In that case, she runs low before the stores open tomorrow, he added with a wink. Rachel nodded solemnly. Guess you know her better than I gave you credit for. You want to stay for dinner? I was fixing to barbecue some Slippery Rock steaks when you showed up. We've got plenty of food to go around. He knew she wouldn't, but found himself interested in gauging her reaction. She cast a wary look toward the living room, mashing her lips together into a straight line. Kellen followed her gaze to the sofa. Chris and Lisa smiled encouragingly. Vaughn stared at the television, his expression blank. Thanks anyway, but I'm expected home for dinner. Kellen closed the door behind her. Vaughn wandered to the window, watching Rachel's truck disappear over the hill. What was that about? Lisa asked. Kellen rubbed the back of his neck. She wanted to be sure I understood that if I hurt Amy, there'll be a reckoning. Gotta admire her, Chris said. Rachel takes care of her own. Always has. We were in the same grade in kindergarten through high school and graduation. All those years, no one bullied Amy or Jenna more than once, I can tell you that. That's page 62 and 63. Page 66 and 67. I don't want to tear the page. Okay. I guess 67, 66, 67, 68, 69, and 70. Amy peeked into the pot of the stove to see how close the boiling water was, then plunked into a chair. If there's one thing we've learned, Jen, with Dad dying and Mom's depression, it's that we can't let the what-ifs get at the best of us. Even when it's the toughest thing in the world, we have to keep moving forward. You're right, but it's so hard, especially with a lawyer requiring us to dig up the past that was brutal, talking to a complete stranger about Mom's condition. I understand his need to know everything, to prove in court that she needs a permanent guardian, but sitting there yesterday describing the morning we found her, she scrubbed a hand through her cheek, her eyes turned glassy moisture. That was rough. A stab of guilt pierced Amy's gut, and she hugged Jenna. She hadn't been home since her sisters discovered their mother unconscious in a pasture next to the empty bottles of pills and vodka. Rachel had been the one to dial 911 while Jenna was administered CPR. Amy had spent the morning peeling and slicing Yukon Golds for a potato challenge on the Chef Showdown. She'd flown to the hospital in Albuquerque that night, but it made no difference. The damage to her mother's brain and body was irreversible. Jenna sucked in a slow breath, and that seemed to shake off her sadness with a full body shudder. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, I finished designing our web page last night. The Heritage Farm website is ready to launch, pending yours and Rachel's approval. I've got a few minutes before the water boils. Let's check it out. Beneath the splashy title, Heritage Farm, was a description. Amy read it aloud. Heritage Farm allows families to participate in the day-to-day running of a working farm. Guests will pick out produce grown in the ranch's garden to be prepared for their dinner, assist in the feeding and care of livestock, and ride the fence on the line on the horseback to take in sweeping views, one of the most picturesque landscapes in the world. Jenna had done a terrific job. Amy had no idea she was so savvy with computers. This sounds great. You've got a real knack for marketing, and the page is designed fantastic. Thanks. Surprised and delighted, Amy read on. Guests of the farm stay in a luxury appointed room in the main house where they begin and end each day in a locally grown gourmet multi-course meal prepared by... Amy blinked at the screen, her stomach churning. Jenna finished reading the passage. Prepared by a nationally renowned chef and Ultimate Chef Showdown contestant, Amy Sorrento. Amy pressed a finger to her temple. I hate that. I'll never live that down. My show appearance on that show. I know, sweetie, but the sort of publicity we'll get from advertising and your performance on Chef Showdown might be the key to Heritage Farm's success. We also have to play that card. It was the worst experience of my life. Okay, true, but this is our farm I'm talking about. This, she speared her finger toward the computer screen, is our last chance to avoid foreclosure, pay Mom's care, and keep a roof over all our heads. The producers from the Travel Channel would be arriving in January to film a piece that would air around Valentine's Day. That's huge! Beyond huge! We have to do everything possible to promote this business. You're right, I'm still making peace with what happened on the show, but I'll be okay. She rose and eased the ravioli into the water and then adjusted the heat. We have to keep moving forward. Easier said than done. Have you gotten any nibbles on that job listing you posted? Jenna asked. Not one. She placed ads online in the community newspapers across the state 2 weeks earlier looking for a qualified sous chef. Hard to believe no one was jumping at the chance to work at a startup restaurant that's hours away from the nearest big city, working under a failed reality show chef for a pittance. Don't be so hard on yourself. It'll work out. You'll see with the way the economy's plummeting the past few years, someone's bound to need a job, and once they're here, they'll sense how successful this little startup restaurant's going to be. The skeptic in Amy's rejected Jenna's optimistic prediction, but even still in her heart she had hoped that Jenna was right for all their sakes. What about you? After your sample of ravioli, I'll get you up to speed on the beef supply contract. Maybe you can call the Slipping Rock Ranch office tomorrow and set up an appointment. I believe you have a date Friday night with Slipping Rock's owner. You can talk to him about that contract yourself. No way. You have to handle it, Jenna. I can't be responsible for negotiating a business contract with Kellen. I'm a terrible judge of character, especially when it comes to Cowboys. Look at the way he coerced me into going out with him. One kiss and I lost control. If I tried to bargain with him over beef prices, I'd probably bankrupt our business. Not all Cowboys are bad news, you know. Tucking a slotted spoon under her arm, Amy opened the fridge. Want to make a bet? You watched what happened to me on Chef Showdown, right? I did. It sucked. Brock McKenna was a jerk. Amy snorted as she rummaged through the something to dice, finding a bag of celery and cabbage and garlic that she hadn't remembered buying. Jerk is too nice of an insult. That no-good, lying, cheating, rotten bastard tops the list of reasons why I hate Cowboys. But it's not only him. We can add Dad and every boyfriend I had in high school to that list, and every boyfriend you ever had, and pretty much every other cowboy I've ever had the misfortune of meeting. Then why do you sleep with them? Beats the hell out of me. She kicked the fridge door closed and slammed the bunch of celery on the counter. Look, sis, I get how ridiculous this obsession is. There's something about Cowboys, and I just can't explain it. Grabbing a plate, she fished a tender ravioli out of the water and slotted the spoons, drizzled the sage cream sauce over them, and set the plate under Jenna's nose. As Jenna dug in, moaning in bliss, Amy took her Mac knife in the hand and got busy dicing, hoping to forget all her problems for a while. Too bad her thoughts kept slipping to Kellen's kiss that morning. Damn him. She couldn't even dice in peace since he swaggered into her life. She dumped handfuls of diced celery into a bowl, frowning. Friday night when he arrived to pick her up for the date, he insisted on a date she never agreed to. She'd have to find the guts to ask him to leave her alone. How hard could that be? She grabbed a second bunch of celery from the fridge. Okay, time to be honest with herself. Telling Kellen to go away was bound to be near impossible, especially if he showed up in that truck wearing that Stetson. She rolled her tongue over that bottom lip at that memory, felt a telltale rush of blood to her inner thighs, and picked up that MAC up again, moving the knife over the cutting board with reckless speed. Maybe she should make an exception to rule number 1. Maybe she needed to give herself permission to satisfy her ridiculous desires with one more roll in the hay with the hottest cowboy she ever laid eyes on before sending him packing. It was a moral compromise that might work, but only if she kept her emotional boundaries in place. Because Amy's real problem wasn't so much about getting horizontal with cowboys, but her penchant for falling in love with them, and her heart had the scars to prove it. Moving on. Big ol' hunk of book we passed there. Page 155 is one short paragraph. How many times did she have to have her illusions shattered before she learned her lesson? She swore to herself when her father died, leaving her mom broken-hearted and penniless. Let me read the rest of this here. To never trust the type of man again. She vowed to learn from her mom's mistake, but despite her best intentions, she continued to perpetuate the cycle begun by her parents. Moving forward. Page 178, 179, 180, and 181. So let's see, we got 4 pages to read here. When you and I talked on Sunday, promise me you wouldn't hurt her, and that was the first thing you did. The circumstances changed, okay? And really, it's none of your business. When someone hurts my sister, I make it my business. Kellen crinkled his eyebrows in an oh, please look. He felt his hackles stir as he began his defenses, gearing up for battle. You know what? I don't even care what you say. You're nosy as gossipy as everyone else in this town. This is the second time you've tried to put yourself in the middle of our relationship. If Amy wants you to know what's going on, she'll tell you. They glared at each other until Kellen broke away, a little ashamed of snapping at someone whose mom was suffering a life-threatening health scare for a few rooms over. You think I'm being pushy? She picked a splash of mud off her jeans, but Jenna and Tommy and Amy are my only family, and I'm going to protect them no matter what. I respect that you do. I do. All I can tell you right now is that I'm going to do the best I can for Amy. You'll have to trust me. Why would I trust you? He squinted up at the fluorescent lights. That's a good question, one I hope that time will answer. She snorted. Wait and see. My least favorite phrase in the English language. He smiled a peace offering. You want me to say it in Spanish? Nice try. Is Amy okay? He asked. I mean, with your mom, is she coping? I haven't seen her since we got to the hospital. She's hanging in there, but she can't hardly tear her eyes away from Mom like she might disappear or something. One thing about Amy is she's tougher than she looks, and she definitely is tougher than she thinks she is. You're right about that. He'd only known her for a week, but in that time she'd proven herself to be one of the strongest, most resilient people he'd ever known. Rachel got up to leave, but Kellen stopped her with a hand on the arm. Listen, you're going to think about this. Is the pot calling the kettle black? But I have to ask you something. She settled in her chair. Shoot, what's going on with you and Vaughn? Her spine stiffened and her expression grew defensive. And you accuse me of inserting myself into other people's business? Like I said, pot and kettle. So, what happened between you two? She found a splash of mud on her forearm to pick at before she bounced up. She took it to bouncing on her leg. What did Vaughn tell you? He didn't tell me anything, not true, but he was smart enough man not to tell her that Vaughn didn't seem to care for her. It's just that the other day after you left, he was agitated. He had the urge to take up smoking again. She bounced her leg and stilled. He stopped? Interesting. 11 months ago. She swallowed her stare, growing more vacant than she seemed to shake herself awake. Good for him, for his health, I mean. With an observant eye on her, he fleshed out details. He never said he wanted to prompt him to quit. The decision seemed to come out of the blue, but once he made the choice, he was all in. He stopped cold turkey and was impossible to be around for a month or so. He yelled a lot and moped around. Lisa Binderman swore he was going through the classic symptoms of heartbreak. Heartbreak? Kellen didn't miss the catch in her wisp word. Because he ended a relationship with nicotine. Anyway, after a time, he started smiling again, cracking jokes, got back to his old self, but it took a while. Smoking really had a hold on him. Narrowing his eyes at her, he decided to take a calculated risk. But when he saw you on Sunday, something inside him seemed to snap. He got that same damaged look in his eyes as he had after he quit smoking. Why do you suppose that is, Rachel? How should I know what's going on through his head? Something tells me you do. She turned her eyes to the ceiling and sighed. And if I had told you it was none of your business, then I'd say, when someone hurts my family, I make it my business. Touché. Look, I've known Vaughn for 12 years, and other than the month that he quit smoking, he's never gone to such a dark place in his head as he did when he saw you. I don't like having one of my best friends upset. Sniffing, Rachel stood. Discomfort rippled over her features. I'm sorry I upset him. I'll work harder to avoid him in the future. Whoa there, what in the hell happened between them? Something major. That was much clearer, because now Rachel was looking like Vaughn had the other day. Restless and bitter and full of private pain. He snagged her hand. Hey, did Vaughn hurt you? She wrenched away from his grip. Yes, he did, but I hurt him too. And that's all you need to know. She strode away. The ICU doors flapped open and closed behind her. Moving on. Page 200 and 201. That's why you and I are having this conversation. The rafts moved rhythmically over the foot, smoothing out the jagged edges in preparation for a new shoe. Does Amy know of your involvement with Amorex? She does as of last night. How did that go? Not good. Didn't help her mom in that health scare yesterday. Bethany might not make it through this one. Oh, no. Are Amy and her sisters taking it hard? Hard enough, but I think they knew it was coming. Kellen collected the pile of nails from the ground, glancing sideways at Vaughn. Rachel seems to be handling it best. Nothing seems to get under her skin except you. The raft stopped. Vaughn's lips were a thin line. He stared at her hoof for a few beats, then resumed his task, never meeting Kellen's eyes. If Amorex is suing Sorrento's, then you can't have anything to do with Amy on a personal level. Honestly, I believe you took her on a date Friday night, and that would be wrong on so many levels, ethically and morally. I know, but... Finally, Vaughn looked at him square, pointing the rasp at him. But nothing. You've got to quit seeing her immediately and keep your distance until Amorex business is sorted out. No more dates, no more looks at her at church, and whatever you do, don't sleep with her again. Kellen poked a shoe nail and with a pat of his thumb, not hard enough to break skin, but enough to sting. You're right, I shouldn't have. She hates me now, so there's no danger of repeating that mistake. I don't mean to be harsh, man, but you got to understand, there's a line that you can't cross. Yeah, I know. Now you can get off my back now. Vaughn released the Remington's foot, tossed the rasp into the tool bin, and straightened. I don't think you get it, but okay. About this lawsuit, Morton's confession would be enough to open a criminal investigation. The FBI would need to be involved, since the situation crosses state lines, but I've got a contact there I could reach out to. Too bad for you that you didn't get it on tape. Actually, I did. Moving forward. Page 206, 207... 208, 209. The opposite, actually. If you looked in the briefcase, you probably saw the business card of my friend Matt Roenick. He's an save it, Kellen, because you know what? This is a blessing in disguise. You helping Amorex destroy us, it certainly opened Amy's eyes to the truth about you and your intentions. She glanced sideways at Vaughn. He sifted his weight, and his expression remained unflinching. His only tell was that he was in a supple ripple of his cheek and his clenched jaw. It's opened my eyes, too, she continued, swinging her back to Kellen. I'm done with breaking my back to hold on to this farm. Every day of my entire life, working myself to the bone, the whole entire time, worrying about money and my family's future. You better believe I've got ulcers to prove it. So this lawsuit I got served today got me thinking. What's stopping me from taking my sisters and my nephew and starting over somewhere else? Far away from this loose-lipped, judgmental hole of a town. There's nothing here worth fighting for anymore. Rachel, it was Vaughn. He took a step toward her. His hand was outreached like he was aiming for her shoulders. She pivoted to face him. Don't, Rachel, me. You allowed this to happen. You let my sister get taken advantage of by your best friend, knowing his family's company wanted to ruin us. She took a deep breath. Or is that what you wanted? Amorex to take my land and force us to leave? Then you don't have much of a deal with me anymore. Do you hate me that much? Rachel, no. He tried to reach for her again. Not another step closer, Vaughn. He stopped, his hands out like a buffer between them. I don't even hate you. Not even close. Kellen wasn't in the position to see the expression on Rachel's face, but her shoulders slumped. "I wish you did," she whispered. Vaughn's lips screwed up. "Sometimes I wish that too." She nodded and lurched away. "Kellen, go ahead and tell your uncle I'm not going to put up a fight. All that matters to me is my family, and Amherst can't take them away, no matter what power they think they have over us." Without looking at Vaughn, she opened the door and walked out into the night. Vaughn followed. Knowing him, he wanted to make sure she made it to her truck safely, as if evil strangers were waiting in the shadows to ambush her. Kellen stood next to Vaughn and watched her leave in silence. The minute her taillights disappeared, Vaughn put up a full force of strength into a kick to launch a potted plant into the porch. It sailed into the driveway and smashed to bits. Max must have slept under a porch chair, because he army crawled down the steps and slunk out of view. Cursing loudly, Vaughn stomped to his truck and flipped open the glove compartment. He emerged with a pack of cigarettes in his hand and hung one from his lips. "Vaughn, don't." "Shut up, Kellen. You have no idea how bad I want to punch you right now." Cupping his hands over his mouth to block the wind, he lit up and took a long drag, holding the smoke in his lungs for a few beats before releasing it into a slow stream. "Damn, that's good." Leaning against the truck, he looked up at the stars. He took another slow drag. Kellen was rattled by Vaughn's reaction as he was exchanged with Rachel. Mechanically, he walked to the barbecue deck and the lighter fluid and matches. Back out front, he snatched the cigarette pack from the roof of Vaughn's truck and metal bucket from the side of the house. He couldn't stand the idea of Vaughn having to quit his addiction a second time. Once had been hard enough on all of them. The pack went into the bucket, followed by the fluid and then a match. The bucket exploded into flames. "They sell more at the quick stand, you know," Vaughn said evenly. "Don't do this to yourself again. I know something happened between you and Rachel, but don't use cigarettes to cope. Damn near killed you to quit the last time." He took another drag. "It wasn't quitting smoking that nearly killed me. I was there. You suffered like a dog for weeks. Nicotine withdrawal. I'm telling you, it wasn't the cigarettes." "Then what?" For the first time since Rachel drove away, Vaughn looked Kellen in the eye. "What I did to Rachel was the shame I have to live with every day. It's worse than nicotine withdrawal, worse than anything I ever experienced." Vaughn Cooper was one of the best men Kellen had ever known. With a sense of honor set in stone, he would never purposely hurt anyone, especially a woman. "What exactly did you do to Rachel?" Moving on. Page 214, 215, 216, 217, and 218. "You said that the affair lasted for 4 weeks. How did it end?" Kellen asked. "I would have kept going back to her until it destroyed us both, but the night of her mom's suicide attempt, Rachel was with me. It's why she didn't know her mom left the house that brought her to her senses, all right? After I finished the preliminary investigation, I drove to the hospital, worried about how she was dealing with everything. We were standing next to my car in the parking lot because we didn't want her sisters to know I was there. She told me she couldn't take it anymore. The sleepless nights, the sneaking around like criminals, the guilt over what happened with her mom. Her family needed too much for her to be selfish, she said. She was in charge of the farm all by herself and had to concentrate on that. She didn't have time for an affair that would never amount to anything real. Ouch, no wonder she thought you hated her." He paused mid-stride. "I don't, and I can't believe that she thought that." He resumed, agitating, pacing. "Anyway, her words were like a slap to my face. Woke me up from the fog I was in. I took a long, good look at her, and I really looked. She had dark circles under her eyes. She lost too much weight. Our affair was destroying her as much as it was destroying me. And then it hit me. Nothing as wrong as what it did. What I did to her can lead to anything but pain and regret. I sacrificed my professional and personal integrity for nothing. Because it didn't matter how perfect we were together, we were doomed from the start. How heartbreaking." Kellen did the math in his head. Bethany Serrano's suicide attempt was 4 weeks after the New Year's Eve, the end of January. That's around the time you quit smoking. He shuffled dirt on the edge of the porch with his foot. "I needed to suffer. I needed that physical pain to distract me from the shame. I didn't quit smoking for my health, but for my survival." Kellen joined him at the porch rail. "You're not over her." Vaughn's face turned heavenward, and he chewed down the inside of his cheek. Check. "How do you get over someone like that, who makes you feel more alive than you ever felt in your life? I can't stop the what-ifs. If I'd only waited, kept my wits about me, and my pants zipped, I could have asked her out properly once her family issues got settled down, treated her like she deserves, instead of some shameful secret. I would have been proud to have her on my arm. What we would have been beautiful, and I poisoned it. You can't think like that, man. You could still fix it with her. Give me a break. This is what I'm telling you, because you can't let the same thing happen with you and Amy. If you care anything about her, and I'm guessing you do, you have to leave her alone. Bide your time. Don't do something that goes against your personal and professional ethics. It'll poison everything you touch." Frustration tore at him at the sight of his friend in pain. He wanted to solve the problem, to fix things for Vaughn. What a useless desire, considering his own life was screwed up 6 ways to Sunday. Vaughn was right about Kellen's choices, but knowingly, logically, what he needed to do, and hearing firsthand how the same situation tore his friend's relationship apart, were different animals entirely. Mostly, though, it hurt Vaughn hadn't confided in him sooner. When you were going through all that, you should have let me know. I would have been there for you. He propped an arm on the rail and raised an eyebrow at Kellen. Would you have been? I'm not so sure. You're like a brother to me, Kay, but I'm sorry I don't think you would have handled it well. What do you mean? Look, a big part of my job is reading people, their motivations, their emotions, all that criminal psychology BS really works. Best weapon I have for solving a case. So you know what I'm talking about. I know you better than anyone, and I can tell that you're a judge of people, other than yourself, by an impossible standard of perfection. Kellen opened his mouth to protest, but Vaughn cut him off. No, you listen. You know it's true, and I didn't want you judging me. I was going through too much already. You would have pulled the I told you so card. Kellen reeled, too angry and surprised to speak. Vaughn's comment cut him to the bone. Any way he looked at it, the people he cared about held themselves apart from him. His best friend hadn't even trusted him with the biggest secret. His brother had even abandoned him. And Amy, it was too upsetting to consider how she felt about him now. He wondered about Chris and Lisa, if they'd agreed to Vaughn's assessment. Am I really that bad? Not bad, I think. The way you grew up, you can't help it. You're protecting yourself. I get it. I'm sorry, I just don't know what else to say. He slugged Kellen's shoulder, flashing his characteristic Vaughn smile. Don't sweat it. You and I are cool. I'm here, aren't I? Fixing Remington's shoe, solving your Amorex problems, and giving you advice about your love life. I gotta say, I wish you hadn't blown up my smokes. I'm not sorry about that. Nah, me either. I don't want to get started again. Gradually, the pain had gripped Vaughn's features, melted away, and Kellen was relieved to see his old friend again. I'm going to grab my tools and hit the road. He waggled his finger at Kellen and pulled his face. Some of us need our beauty sleep more than others. Kellen gave him a playful shove as he walked inside. You talking to me, ugly? Oh, now that hurts. You better watch out or I'll send a bill for my farrier services. That would be a first. How about I pay you in steaks? He stuck out his hand, and Vaughn shook it, exaggerated up and down. Man, you're getting the short end of this stick with that deal. He grabbed the tool bag of the CD Kellen had burned for him in the conversation with Morton. I'll be in touch with the Amorex plan once I've lined up all the pieces with the FBI. Do me a favor. Sit tight until then, and don't contact Morton until I give you a green light. And for the love of God, don't tell Amy what you're up to. Thanks for your help on this. They shook again, more gently this time, and thumped shoulders. You and I are family, Kay, and I don't take that lightly. Someone messes with my family, they mess with me. Page 218. He watched Vaughn let himself out, marveling at how he inadvertently echoed Rachel's words from the night before at the hospital. He tried to visualize the two of them together on Kellen's sofa, drinking beer and eating steak, but he couldn't see it. For his friend's peace of mind, he hoped the two of them would find a path through their heartache back to each other. Oh, this is a good book. Loving this book. Page 221 and 222. Sitting on the porch, holding Jake's address and stewing over his envy of the hand that Tommy had been dealt in his life, the truth hit Kellen like a sucker punch. He'd been wrong about so many things in his life, but mostly this. He thought that he could build a better family than the one he'd been given. He thought he could choose the elements that created a perfect life, like he might choose a bull for breeding. He thought an ideal family involved tranquility and consistency, not drama and strife and pain. But his perimeters had been too rigid. Love involved consistency, yes, but so much more. Love was not so much about harmony, about the fight to hold on to it, no matter what, even when it hurt. Amy and her sisters had taught him what had mattered most about love, and its ferocity. Okay, we're about done, so that's pretty awesome. Page 241 and 242. He opened her door. You need to stop holding yourself back and start discovering the real Amy Sorrento. Amy cocked her head at him, contemplating his nugget of wisdom. What does that mean, really? An impish grin lit his face up. I have no idea, but I hear it all the time on those daytime talk shows that Jillian watches. Seems to be the advice that women give each other when they're sharing their feelings. Amy chuckled. Oh, Mr. Dixon, you had me thinking you were some closet self-guru there for a moment. He raised an eyebrow. I could be. You might never know. When she chuckled again, he gave him his shoulder affectionate shake. Don't count Kellen out yet. Things might turn out fine. Miracles do happen, you know. She nodded and looked over her shoulder, drinking in the sights around her, the back porch of the white and gray house she grew up in, rolling hills and deep valleys. that sustained her family for generations. She smelled the fragrance of dried winter grasses wafting through the breeze, and the pungent scent of the snow melting into the dirt. Boy, she hoped Mr. Dixon was right. They all could use a miracle right about now. Page 244, 245, 246, 247. Okay, staring at the land through the window, he got to thinking about what he learned from Amy's family about love and ferocity, about fighting on to hold the people he cared about despite the obstacles. He fished the truck keys from his pocket. She might not want to see him, but he needed to know. He needed her to know that he was there fighting for her. Ah! That song, Fighting for You by the Pirates of Mississippi. If you've never heard it, that song you need to listen to. From the road, he called Vaughn. It was a long shot, but it was worth a try. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Kay, what's up? Chris called and said he found out through the grapevine that Amy and her sisters are taking their mom off life support today, and I'm on my way to the hospital in Albuquerque. Vaughn sighed. Those poor women, it's like it never ends for them. Tell me about it. I thought you might want to know in case you want me to pick you up on my way. This is 245. Silence. Then, why would you do that? There was a time when that Kellen would have let Vaughn get away with the playing dumb, but he was beginning to realize the value in boldly speaking his mind instead of hiding from the truth. So you can be there for Rachel. She's going to need someone, like they all will. Another bout of silence was followed by a curse. I can't believe that you would suggest that. Didn't you listen to anything I told you? Me showing up where I'm not wanted will only cause Rachel more pain than she's already got, and she's got plenty from the sound of it. Things could still be fixed between you two. No, Kay, they can't. Stop pushing. Fine. He turned onto the highway headed west. I'll update you soon if I know something, but Vaughn's rant wasn't done. You know what? You shouldn't even be going to that hospital either. You're going to make a mess out of the Amorex investigation. Don't forget that whole whistleblower and the billion-dollar corporate corruption case the Sorrentos are involved in. That's not even ethical. So be it. I'm not letting Amy go through this alone. He ended the call, pressed the accelerator, and sped toward the rising sun. In the hospital, he stopped in the hall outside Bethany's room. The door was closed. Through the slit of the window, he saw Amy, Jenna on the far side of the bed, and Rachel on the near end. Their arms were around each other, their heads bowed. When a nurse passed by, he snagged her with a gesture. Excuse me, I'm a friend of Bethany's family. He motioned to the room. Have they removed the life support yet? The nurse looked into the room, worrying her lip as though a debate of ethics sharing that information. No. They arrived not too long ago, and they asked a few minutes alone with her first. We'll have a waiting room down the hall if you'd like to wait and sit. No, thanks. I'd rather stay here in case they need me. She nodded and hurried on to their duties. Kellen settled against the far wall, keeping them in the view, though, through the window. After a while, the sisters raised their head and spoke. Jenna blew her nose, and Amy skirted at the bed and walked to the door. When it opened, Kellen straightened, prepared to stoically accept whatever reaction Amy had to his presence. She didn't startle when she noticed him, but held out his gaze with a wet rim eyes. Her expression was so sad. Kellen had a rough time staying still and was not reaching for her. You heard, she croaked. My God, it was torture not pulling her into his arms. Amy, I know you hate me right now, but... With a hand over her mouth, she shook her head. A sob bubbled up violently, racking her body with tremors. She squeezed her eyes closed, struggling against it. Kellen snapped. She could tell him to go to hell later, but he couldn't bear to see her standing there crying any longer. He crossed the hall and embraced her, burying her head in his chest, and her cry tore free. He backed into the wall, out of the way of the bustling corridor, and held on to her like his life was depending on it, which in some important ways it did. The minute Amy's tornado had touched down in his life, he started to see the world differently. She challenged his perception of family and love, pushing him to be a better friend, a better brother, and a better man. Because of her, he was finally going to stand up to his uncle in a real public way. Because of her, he would try to make harder amends with Jake. It was extraordinary, really, the changes she wrought through it without even trying. And it all started with some celery. Pressing his cheek to her temple, he allowed himself a small melancholy smile. Thank goodness he followed his instincts to go to the hospital. He'd continue to be there for her and her family throughout their grief for as long as she would let him. And no matter what he had to do to make that happen, he vowed to save their farm. Even if Amy never stopped resenting him for hiding his Amorex ties, he owed her that much for helping him discover the man he wanted to be. When her tears subsided, he asked, "What's the next step?" She shifted but remained in his arms until her forehead was resting on his chest. "I have to tell the nurse that we're ready." "Ready?" "To turn the machines off and let her go." "You stay with your family. I'll take care of that." He shuffled toward the door, but she didn't release him. "Kellen, I'm glad you're here." Oh man, that alone was worth the drive. Me too. She kissed his cheek and re-entered his room. I keep saying cheek tonight, not cheek. Sorry. On page 267. All the officers but Vaughn had driven away by the time he returned. There was a silver lining to the story, you know, Vaughn said. Kellen climbed into the passenger seat of the patrol car. What's that? Vaughn started the engine and pulled it out into the driveway. If Morton was telling the truth, then Sorrento's farm has enough oil underneath it to have sustained them indefinitely. No bankrupt, no foreclosure. That ought to bring the sisters some peace of mind. And with any kind of luck, a crapload of money to go along with that peace of mind. Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Page 274. She thought she'd fallen in love with him that night at the house when he revealed his Mac knife collection. How wrong she'd been. Love wasn't about a Stetson hat or the right knife or any life's superficial details. That had been infatuation, along with a heaping scoop of lust. What she learned from her roller coaster relationship with Kellen was that the person did not fall into real love, but built it. Slowly over time, with painstaking care and patience. Real love was fusion of two people's flaws and strengths, sitting atop a rubble of their past, cemented by the hopes for their future. It was a humor and steadfast and a little bit of magic. It was a creation stronger and more durable than either person had been alone. What she felt for Brock McKenna or even Kellen on their first date paled in comparison to the potential for the love she felt in her heart as she watched him fly over the train of the horse. Hell yes. She felt loads of hot lust for that cowboy watching him ride. Everything about him called to her, his hands on the reins, his thighs rubbing against that saddle, and the curls of his brown hair beneath his hat, and those lips. It's a good book. Page 287 and 288. Kellen blinked at her. She thought she was in love with him? Did she mean that she wasn't now? He hated that being him around made her feel bad about herself. That was the opposite of how he felt about himself when she was around. All he knew was that she wasn't a crazy idiot or a slut. He felt something surge between them that night too, something electric and full of infinite possibility. Maybe it had been love, and he was the idiot for not recognizing it at the time, as most men are. He sure recognized it now. He loved the way she threw herself into things that she was passionate about, including him. Truth was, since the morning he met her, he'd spent most of every time wishing that he was with her. Not just being naked, but talking like this, grooming horses, cooking, sleeping. He wanted to kiss her good morning and come home to her at lunch, damn it. He wanted to provide for her. He sure hoped that she didn't need him to say pretty words to express what he felt, because he couldn't think of any right now. He walked behind her and brushed her body with his. Her nervous fingers stopped picking at the rope, but she didn't turn, so he wrapped his arms around her chest and pulled her securely against him, resting her head against his collarbone. She closed his eyes. Her hands came up over his arms, embracing him. I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way about yourself. Please don't ever change who you are. Not for me, not for anybody. A tear landed on his forearm. What? That's what Mr. Dixon said. Smart man. Did he give you any other advice? She snorted and maybe laughed a little. Another tear landed on his skin. He told me that if I wanted to be with you, I should be with you. Amorek's lawsuit or not. Turning in his arms, she snaked her hands around his waist and pressed his cheek to his chest. Thank you for helping me with my family by stepping forward as a witness. I knew when I saw Matt Rodneck's card in the paperwork from your briefcase that you weren't out to get us all along with Amorek's. Then Matt told us about the lawsuit would probably be rescinded in the light of criminal investigation at Morton's arrest. A fresh round of tears pooled in her big brown eyes, and that's all because of you. He squeezed his arms. She felt so perfect there, warm and soft and smelling of flowers like she always did. He didn't even mind that curly brown hair tickling underneath the underside of his chin. I know whose side I'm on. I'm not going to let Amorek's bankrupt or kick you off your land, not without waging war against them in return. Another fat tear made its way toward her mouth. He flicked it away with his finger. I owe you a thank you, too. For everything. For touching your tornado down in my corner of my world and opening my eyes to so many things that I was missing before. Oh, this man is perfect. Sorry, a little emotional. Moving forward. And the last paragraph on page 312. Kellen stood at the head of the table and picked up a Mac knife to carve the prime rim. Amy's heart spilled over with love at the sight of him. All those rules she couldn't help but break. All that heartache she experienced at the hand of other cowboys, it was all worth it because those experiences led her down this bumpy, winding road to Kellen Reed's door. She had a lot of work ahead of her to make the restaurant and an inn a success, but she was home, with her family around her, the cowboy of her dreams by her side. Life didn't get any sweeter than that. Now, we're going to read about Melissa Cutler here. She's a Southern California native in a beautiful San Diego with her husband with 2 children and a nervous Siamese cat. She spent her teenage years on the floor of the local bookstore romance aisle making the tough choices about which novel to buy with a measly paycheck from her filing clerk job. Her love for happily ever after stories continued into her adulthood, and in 2008 she decided to take a romance novel devotion to the next level by penning one herself. She now divides her time between her dual passions for writing sexy cowboy contemporaries and on your edge of your seat romantic suspense. Find out more about Melissa and her books at www.melissacutler.net or write to her at cutlermail@yahoo.com. You can also find Melissa on Facebook and Twitter. What does this book rate? It rates a 25. That means outstanding. You got to read it. You won't regret it. And if they made a man like this in real life, all of us women would definitely be satisfied. Just saying. Anyway, wish you well. Let's try that again. Wish you well. Wash your hands. Keep your social distance and wear your mask. Good night. God bless. Probably see you again tomorrow.